the prayer from the Laudato Si encyclical, and we'll pray that together. We'll wait just a second here, but welcome all of you. Thanks for being here. It's really exciting, and we've never had a panel before. This is a first, so that's fun. And I'm Sandy Ashley. I'm a member of the St. Mary's Care for Creation Ministry. So let's start. It's a prayer for our earth. All-powerful God, you are present in the whole universe and in the smallest of your creatures. You embrace with your tenderness all that exists. Pour out upon us the power of your love, that we may protect life and beauty. Fill us with peace, that we may live as brothers and sisters, harming no one. O God of the poor, help us to rescue the abandoned and forgotten of this earth, so precious in your eyes. Bring healing to our lives, that we may protect the world and not prey on it, that we may sow beauty, not pollution and destruction. Touch the hearts of those who look only for gain, at the expense of the poor and the earth. Teach us to discover the worth of each thing, to be filled with awe and contemplation, to recognize that we are profoundly united with every creature as we journey towards your infinite light. We thank you for being with us each day. Encourage us, we pray, in our struggle for justice, love, and peace. Amen. Pope Francis knows how to say a lot. As we begin this morning, let us pay tribute to the native peoples that inhabited the western United States for over 20,000 years before Lewis and Clark and other explorers explored it less than 225 years ago. The maps from that time show the Helena Valley as a common hunting ground used by the Blackfeet from the north, the Salish from the west, the Shoshone from the south, and the Crow from the east. Members of these and many other tribes live here to this day. Their traditions, culture, philosophy, and spirituality have much to teach us about protecting and caring for creation and how we relate to it. I want to welcome all of you to the Living Legacy of Pope Francis, the title of this panel, the 10th anniversary celebration of Laudato Si on Care for Our Common Home, sponsored by St. Mary's Care for Creation Ministry. Thanks for coming. It's not much of a presentation without an audience, and a big thanks to our parish staff and to the St. Francis Peace Through Justice Ministry for providing the food and the support for this event. When we began planning this event, Pope Francis was living his earthly life in his simple way as a model for us all. Lots has changed. As a church and world leader, he was a strong, respected, moral, and spiritual voice for care for all of God's creation. He wrote the encyclical Laudato Si, which means praise be to you, as a model for us all. Referencing St. Francis, expanding the creation care work based on Blessed Pope Paul VI, Saint Pope John Paul II, and Pope Benedict XVI. Pope Francis also made the Holy See part of the Paris Climate Agreement. He added care for creation as the 7th theme of Catholic social teaching, and one of the 7 aims of Laudato Si is the cry of the poor, which is also part of Catholic social teaching. We thank God for him and his love-filled dedication to creating a livable climate for all life as we honor, remember, and appreciate him in a special way this morning. Quite recently, people of all faiths and no faith from all parts of the world celebrated as Cardinal Robert Prevost became Pope Leo XIV. He is a member of the Order of St. Augustine, which values peace, harmony, unity, faithfulness, and service to others. He has a strong missionary background and is known for his work with people in need. He's an American with dual citizenship and speaks 5 languages. For a new pope, the choice of a name is significant. The first Pope Leo was Leo the Great and was known for his diplomacy and peacemaking. The most recent Pope Leo is known for his social justice work. One of his encyclicals, Rerum Novarum, on the rights of workers in the late 1800s during the Industrial Revolution, laid the foundation for the Catholic social teaching that we still use today. He is also the Pope who sent the future Saint Mother Cabrini to New York to provide material and spiritual assistance to the Italian immigrants. Echoing Pope Francis, this Ignatian Solidarity Network quoted Pope Leo XIV as saying, "Dominion over nature, the task which God gave humanity, should not become tyrannical. It must be a relationship of reciprocity with the environment." We give thanks to God for Pope Leo XIV as we welcome, honor, and pray for him with hope and joy. Laudato Si is a book of praise and love, love for our Creator God and love for our neighbors, human and non-human, ancestors and descendants. It is a celebratory love of praise and thanksgiving and a sacrificial love. It is both a spiritual call and a worldly call. And as we prayerfully seek to develop sustainable lifestyles. The panelists we have with us here today are all part of St. Mary Catholic Community. They are each experts with a shared passion for protecting and nurturing our common home and creating a livable climate. In other words, for answering the clarion call of Laudato Si, and subsequently the apostolic exhortation, Laudate Deum. Our first panelist is Phyllis Dorrington. She is the coordinator of St. Mary's Catholic Community Care for Creation Ministry and a founding member and on the steering committee of the Helena Interfaith Climate Advocates. And she'll be talking to us about Laudato Si 10 years later. She'll be followed by Jennifer Glowinka, who's a Senior Vice President of Academic Affairs and Dean of the College at Carroll. So she is going to talk to us about a number of exciting things happening at Carroll as they work to integrate care for creation into their academic curriculum and some other projects that we are going to be news to us, so that'll be fun. Then we'll have Dave Kraneker and Nina Heinzinger. Dave's a specialist in lifestyle medicine, which I think means Nina probably is too. And they, as you know, work night and day in the Jubilee Garden, which is just such a wonderful thing we have here at St. Mary's. And so they're talking about healthy eating for a healthy planet. And our final panelist is Steve McAvoy. He is a specialist in sustainable, I shouldn't say specialist, but he's a practitioner of sustainable lifestyle and an initiator of the St. Mary Catholic Community Solar Array. It was Steve who took the idea and took it to Father Richard and shepherded it through that process. So we owe him a lot, and it's really inspirational to see what he's done to rehabilitate his piece of, he tends the ground out in the valley, let's put it that way. So each of them will talk for 10 to 12 minutes, and then we'll have question and answer. We are going to try to finish on time, but if any of you need to leave to go to the 10:30 Mass, please feel free to slip out. So with that, Phyllis Dorrington.
Yay. Everything is interconnected. From the encyclical letter Laudato Si on care for our common home. Laudato Si, mi Signore, praise be to you, my Lord. In the words of this beautiful canticle, Saint Francis of Assisi reminds us that our common home is like a sister with whom we share our life and a beautiful mother who opens her arms to embrace us. This sister now cries out to us because of the harm we have inflicted on her by our irresponsible use and abuse of the goods with which God has endowed her. We breathe her air and we receive life and refreshment from her waters. Nothing in this world is indifferent to us. Everything is interconnected. From the encyclical letter, Laudato Si. What this encyclical calls for is nothing less than a conversion of mind and heart to better respect creation with the understanding we are all intrinsically connected. The goal is seeing God in all that lives. The encyclical holds that our relationship with the environment can never be isolated from our relationship with God and with others. I am Phyllis Dorrington, and why am I standing here? What got me so involved with the teachings in Laudato Si and St. Mary's Care for Creation ministry? Just like each of you, I care for our beautiful Montana environment and the beauty of our world. In 2015, the United Nations Paris Agreement to combat climate change was signed, and the powerful encyclical Laudato Si was released. I was aware of them, but, well, in 2018 at St. Mary's, Carol McAvoy led a book study of Laudato Si and introduced us to the book Climate Justice, written by Mary Robinson, former President of Ireland. The combination of these two powerful writings skyrocketed my concern and involvement for our common home. Laudato Si brought a theological, a spiritual, and social justice perspective to the climate crisis. Robinson's book transformed my thinking on climate change by personalizing the impact my everyday actions have on Earth and on the poor throughout the world. She beautifully tells the story of subsistence farmers in Malawi and Kenya, female herders from Mongolia, a salon owner in Mississippi, and the impact this rapidly changing climate has on their way of life. After reading it, I knew I needed to answer Pope Francis's call to care more, to work for climate justice, and raise people's awareness on what we are doing to our world. Thank you, Carol, for making this happen. This was a true conversion of mind and heart. Now I'd like to share with you a powerful 6-minute video encapsulating the vision of Laudato Si on Care for Our Common Home. It includes the 2022 introduction of the Laudato Si Action Platform, which is a potent framework for realizing the healing of creation. Sit back, take in the lyrical Italian and the powerful images.
Cari fratelli e sorelle, con l'enciclica Laudato Si, promulgata nel 2015, invitavo tutte le persone di buona volontà a prendersi cura della terra che è la nostra casa comune. Da tempo ormai questa casa che ci ospita soffre per ferite che noi provochiamo a causa di un atteggiamento predatorio che ci fa sentire padroni del pianeta e delle sue risorse e ci autorizza a un uso irresponsabile dei beni che Dio ci ha dato. Oggi queste ferite si manifestano drammaticamente in una crisi ecologica senza precedenti, che interessa il suolo, l'aria, l'acqua e in genere l'ecosistema in cui gli esseri umani vivono. L'attuale pandemia poi ha portato alla luce in modo ancora più forte il grido della natura e quello dei poveri che ne subiscono maggiormente le conseguenze, evidenziando che tutto è interconnesso e interdipendente e che la nostra salute non è separata dalla salute dall'ambiente in cui viviamo. Abbiamo bisogno perciò di un nuovo approccio ecologico che trasformi il nostro modo di abitare il mondo, i nostri stili di vita, la nostra relazione con le risorse della terra e in generale il modo di guardare all'uomo e di vivere la vita. Un'ecologia umana integrale che coinvolge non solo le questioni ambientali, ma l'uomo nella sua totalità, diventa capace di ascoltare il grido dei poveri ed essere fermento per una nuova società. Abbiamo una grande responsabilità, specialmente nei confronti delle future generazioni. Che mondo vogliamo lasciare ai nostri bambini e ai nostri giovani? Il nostro egoismo, la nostra indifferenza e i nostri stili irresponsabili stanno minacciando il futuro dei nostri ragazzi. Rinnovo allora il mio appello: prendiamoci cura della nostra madre terra, vinciamo la tentazione dell'egoismo che ci rende predatori delle risorse, coltiviamo il rispetto per i doni della terra, della creazione, inauguriamo uno stile di vita e una società finalmente ecosostenibili. Abbiamo l'opportunità di preparare un domani migliore per tutti. Dalle mani di Dio abbiamo ricevuto un giardino. Ai nostri figli non possiamo lasciare deserto. In questo contesto, il 24 maggio 2020, ho indetto l'anno Laudato Si, la cui organizzazione è stata affidata al Dicastero per il Servizio di Sviluppo Umano Integrale. Ringrazio tutti coloro che hanno celebrato quest'anno con moltissime iniziative. Oggi sono lieto di annunciare che l'anno Laudato Si sfocerà in un progetto di azione concreto, la Laudato Si Action Platform, un cammino di 7 anni che vedrà impegnate in diversi modi le nostre comunità perché diventino totalmente sostenibili nello spirito dell'ecologia integrale. Vorrei dunque invitare tutti ad affrontare questo cammino insieme. In particolare mi rivolgo a queste 7 realtà: famiglie, parrocchie e diocesi, scuole e università, ospedali, imprese e aziende agricole, organizzazioni, gruppi e movimenti, istituti religiosi. Lavorare insieme, solo così potremo creare il futuro che vogliamo, un mondo più inclusivo, fraterno, pacifico e sostenibile. In un cammino che durerà per 7 anni, ci lasceremo guidare da 7 oggettivi del Laudato Si che ci indicheranno la direzione mentre perseguiamo la visione dell'ecologia integrale. La risposta al grido della terra, la risposta al grido dei poveri, l'economia ecologica, l'adozione di uno stile di vita semplice, l'educazione ecologica, la spiritualità ecologica e l'impegno comunitario. C'è speranza. Tutti possiamo collaborare, ognuno con la propria cultura ed esperienza, ciascuno con le proprie iniziative e capacità, perché la nostra madre terra ritorni alla sua originale bellezza e la creazione torni a risplendere secondo il progetto di Dio. Dio benedica ognuno di voi e benedica la nostra missione di ricostruire la nostra casa comune. Grazie.
Now, just take a moment and think of one part of the video that struck you. and I'm not going to ask you to share, there's no time for that. Well, currently, over 8,000 institutions and families across 144 countries are participating collectively in the Laudato Si Action Platform, reaching an estimated 17 million people. Currently, no participants in the state of Montana are listed on the website. However, St. Mary's has expressed interest, and Jennifer will soon share the steps Carroll College is taking. Now we will take a look at the 7 goals of Laudato Si on St. Mary's website. You can access the 7 goals with many of the positive actions we have taken as a parish in the healing of creation. And we have taken a lot of actions here. And if you look on the back of your the Prayer for Our Earth, it lists the 7 things and ways to access any of the information we use today. We did also set out some QR cards that you can use as we're trying to reduce the amount of paper that we have. So, by working together, we will make the future we want a more inclusive, fraternal, and sustainable world. The first goal, the response to the cry of the earth, is a call to protect our common home for the well-being of all. Look around you at this beautiful gift of nature, its resilience, its interconnectedness, its ability to sustain life. Can you experience the cry of the earth? The sounds of ferocious winds ripping century-old trees from the ground, the smell of smoke from massive wildfires, the intense heat that fuels droughts. What is your response? Our response to the cry of the earth. The second goal, the response to the cry of the poor, is a call to promote eco-justice, aware that we are called to defend human life from conception to death and all forms of life on earth. Can you see the subsistence farmers trying to coax their families' food from a changing earth? More drought, more massive rains and floods. Many are forced to flee and become climate refugees. The poor are the most impacted and violent by rising heat and violent weather systems. Can you hear me okay? I'm a teacher, so okay. Can you see the interaction between care for our common home and care for the poor? What is your response, our response to the poor? The third goal, ecological economics, an economy that respects creation and promotes the dignity of all humanity. Think of our economy. The fourth goal, the adoption of a simple way of life. It is in our love for each other and love of creation and love of God that we all move and act towards a sustainable lifestyle that gives life instead of destroys life. And then if you noticed on your seat, we have this We Can card, which provides many actions that you can take on your way of adopting of a simple lifestyle, which I know many of you have already embarked on that journey. The fifth goal is ecological education. It is about rethinking and redesigning curricular and institutional reform in the spirit of integral ecology in order to foster ecological awareness and transformative action. The sixth goal, ecological, creation-centered spirituality, recovers a religious vision of God's creation and encourages a greater contact with the natural world in a spirit of wonder, praise, joy, and gratitude. The seventh goal, community engagement and participatory action. Encourage the development of cultures and policies that protect our common home and all who share it. Will you take the time? By working together, we will make the future we want a more inclusive, fraternal, and sustainable world. Then, on October 4th, 2023, 8 years after Laudato Si, the Vatican released Laudate Deum, the apostolic exhortation of the Holy Father Francis to all people of goodwill on the climate crisis. Pope Francis expresses his sadness with the human race as so many continue down a path of excessive, comfortable burning of fossil fuels with little thought or concern on how their actions impact the world, our atmosphere, our life. What the Pope is calling for is nothing less than a conversion of mind and heart. When he writes, "I ask everyone to begin this pilgrimage of reconciliation with the world that is our home and to help make it more beautiful." We look forward to walking together, to building together, and to solving the crisis together. Again, reminding us that everything is interconnected. And finally, the 2025 Jubilee Year of Hope. The Bull of Benediction states, "A journey of hope. May this hope help us in our task of promoting the dignity of all persons and respect for God's gift of creation. May the witness of believers be for our world a leaven of authentic hope." In summary, a thread woven throughout this encyclical is the interconnectedness of ecological and social issues and the interconnectedness of all life. The goal of Laudato Si is seeing God in all that lives and treating all with care and respect. It is a call to the conversion of mind and heart. Mechthild of Magdeburg, a German mystic, wrote in the 13th century, "The day of my spiritual awakening was the day I saw and knew I saw all things in God and God in all things." And to close with Laudato Si, let us sing as we go. May our struggles and our concern for this planet never take away the joy of our hope. And now for Jennifer.
Wonderful. So my name is Jennifer Glowinka. I am the Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs at Carroll College. My background academically is actually in biology. So I received my PhD in biology, specifically in conservation genetics and really working on plant conservation. And so really as an undergraduate in college, I became interested in this and started working on some rare plant populations around the Boise foothills in Idaho. And I took that work and extended it into my doctoral work. And so just care for creation in some way has long been a part of who I am and what I bring to science. And so in this role as the Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs, I really have the opportunity to work with all of our faculty and across campus on a variety of initiatives. And I've been in this role for about 4 years. But our work on this started in 2015 when the encyclical came out. We have a group of faculty and staff who were really interested in starting work toward fulfilling the call of Laudato Si. And this work really has happened in individual pockets across campus, but there's long been kind of a vision for creating something more. We've had some things that have happened over the past decade, pandemics and whatnot, that have kind of, affected our work on this, but we really have a renewed sense of mission on this, and in part it became out of our strategic plan. So in our 2022-2023 strategic planning process at Carroll, one of the most important program for implementation that was determined through that process was for Laudato Si initiatives across campus, and for more of an integrated kind of approach to this, as opposed to all of the individual actions that were happening, right? And really having this be a program that the college as a whole buys into and is working toward. So when we think about the encyclical, right, it really invites us to participate in a multifaceted, interdisciplinary work to address environmental sustainability, community development, natural resource stewardship, right, and this call for social justice for those especially affected by the environmental crisis. And this quote from Laudato Si is really kind of a framing quote for us. We are faced not with two separate crises, one environmental and the other social, but rather with one complex crisis, which is both social and environmental. Today, we have to realize that a true ecological approach always becomes a social approach. It must integrate questions of justice in debates on the environment, so as to hear both the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor. So our work right now is focused on, we have a vision for the work that we want to do over the coming 5 years, but also are working to develop our action plan, and we have registered to become a Laudato Si University, right? So I don't know if I guess we're not showing up on the website yet, so I'm gonna have to contact them. But our vision is to engage our entire campus community, emphasizing interdisciplinary collaboration across the sciences, humanities, social sciences, and pre-professional programs, while maintaining and really living into our liberal arts identity. We strive to foster cooperation and solidarity, seek common ground, and encourage civil conversation in a polarized world. This program will be transformational for Carroll as we strive to really define what it means to be a Catholic liberal arts institution in the 21st century. So we are really focused on this integral ecology part, right? And we have, I would say, probably a couple of different aspects that we're looking at. One is on the educational aspect. So what are we doing in our curriculum to educate our students, and how are we engaging with the community in that? Another is in the actions that Carroll is taking itself, right, as an institution for our own campus sustainability. And so our vision then is to create high-profile academic programs that will attract outstanding students to Carroll College, that develop leadership skills and a sense of social justice and community engagement within issues that affect the poor, that affect the environment. And so we are in the process of developing a sustainability minor and major that will, so we have an environmental science program, right? And we have pockets of different disciplines that are doing individual classes, and we're looking to bring all of these together into that integrated, interdisciplinary kind of way where we are approaching these questions from a theological, sociological, global kind of perspective and environmental perspective. So that minor is in development. We are currently bringing those different aspects together, taking the classes that currently exist and packaging them together for our students. One of the main components of this is going to be required service learning activities. So service learning is different than volunteerism, right? We have a lot of service that is happening on campus, but service learning is very much an academic component where classes are going out, they're doing service work, but they're really then taking that and reflecting on how that is impacting the learning of that particular class, right? Helping them meet those learning objectives and thinking about how the academic work combines then with that community work. And then we're looking to create a green honors program for our high achieving students who deserve recognition for their academic and service components. And this will be intentional kind of integration of the whole and of all of these different activities. We want to support a campus culture where sustainability becomes a core practice, a core value and practice and identity of Carroll College. So unifying the campus as a whole for caring for our planet, caring for humanity, and promoting justice and inclusion for everyone. We'll revive our green team, which is going to be a group of faculty, staff, students that are actually working on green initiatives across campus. And then really this community outreach piece will be one of our main components. We also want to create living learning communities, and this is where our students on campus, pockets of them will be living together and learning together and working on these service issues really related to the environment and care for creation. And eventually, we want to create a center for sustainability, a center for sustainability and social justice. And this will be a place where we will be developing workshops, educational opportunities for the community. We'll be hosting more panels and presentations across campus related to Laudato Si. So we have our action plan related to the 7 pillars that Phyllis described for us. I'm not going to go through all of those, but some of the key kind of initiatives that we have been working on over the years, right, as I mentioned, really are these individual course curricula and community-based learning projects that are ecologically, environmentally, policy, theologically, social justice focused. We have invited speakers and panels that I don't know how good of a job we do in terms of making those known to everyone, but our Faith and Justice or Faith and Reason lecture this last year was focused on Laudato Si. It was a really, really good talk, and so I want to make sure that St. Mary and all of our other parishes have good access and we advertise those well. We have service and volunteer projects already happening across Helena, the region, and the globe. We have Engineers Without Borders that's doing work in Guatemala and Uganda. And these are all projects where we're really trying to help bring clean water, right, physical safety to these different areas. We have Medicine in Mexico, where we have students going and volunteering in healthcare in Mexico. We have community gardens and work with Helena Food Share, some of the work here with Dave and Nina. And then we have Headlights and Service Saturdays. So these are service activities that our campus ministry group really runs. We have interaction that's happening with some of the tribes. We have students that go up to the Blackfeet Reservation and do work up there. We have groups that go to different inner city regions and work with the poor and unsheltered populations there. We have different kinds of facilities upgrades like we have at St. Mary's. So a lot of work that's going on and making sure that our different appliances, our boilers, our water heaters, or all of our lighting is becoming more energy efficient. And then number of like food service, which we hardly think about, right? But there have been really some good efforts made in our food service where they're doing food waste reduction, simple things like even making, not having trays so that people can pile up all of the food and waste a lot of food, reducing the amount of washing that has to be done, right? Even by removing those trays. So there are a number of small things that are happening all over campus. And one of the last ones that I want to tell you about that I think is pretty great is we have a free market move out drive. So when the students move out at the end of the academic year, in the past, all of the stuff that they were moving out of the dorms just got put in dumpsters, right? And people from across the community would come to the dumpsters and try to take out the things that were still really usable. But we now have a free market drive where all of those materials are being collected, taken to one of our bigger spaces on campus, and then others can come and actually take those materials, or we take them and donate them to Good Sam's or wherever across the area. So some of the people that were actually making money off of that are a little frustrated because they don't have access to those materials anymore. But it's been really good in terms of waste reduction across campus. And last, I'll just say, all of the retreats that happen at Legendary Lodge for our students. We're trying to work on maybe some faculty and staff retreats that may happen there, but that real connection and that ecological spirituality they're talking about of being in nature, right, and really incorporating that with our faith life. So we're excited. Hopefully we will have an action plan posted to the website pretty soon where you can see all of the activities that are ongoing and then the plans for the future in that as we work toward becoming a Laudato Si university. It's a 7-year process, so it'll take a little while to get actually that certification through the dicastery. But we're excited about it. We think that'll really help focus all of our energies, and we look forward to having this more academic programming as well, so that students of the new generation, right, are really coming to their work in the world with this mindset, with this mission.
We need to set up for a moment, so we need the TV control.
Wow.
Here's the TV control.
Oh.
Hold on. So Dave will get you to stand up and stretch for a moment while I
Oh,
get the
absolutely,
TV.
yes, let's do some stretching, by all means. Ah,
I get this on the right
nice
source
deep
here.
breath. It's called picking cherries. A little side to side.
Okay, so now we've got it going. We're Dinah and Dave, and our part of the presentation today is we're really focusing on one way that you can actually impact your impact on the world every day. Because I think all of us eat on a regular basis. So Dave's going to share some information, and I'll kind of tie in at the end in terms of how our diet itself affects the planet. So.
It is kind of interesting. 10 years Laudato Si, this is our 10th year in the garden. Our 10th year in the garden. Okay, so healthy diet, healthy planet. There's a standard American diet right now, okay? 60 to 70% of calories are from processed food, right? What's processed food? I don't know, go back in time to the time of our Lord 2,000 years ago. Nobody on the planet would recognize it. What's whole food? You go back 2,000 years, somebody somewhere on the planet was eating it. So, nice and simple. None of that looks healthy. Okay, it relies on very intensive agriculture. Okay. Not only in terms of our crops, but also in terms of animal production. And throughout history, we've have changed the ecological balance between the creatures around us and what we've been eating. And that's had some pretty devastating effects on our health, historically as well as currently. You can go back in time, all right? You go back in time 10,000 years ago, humans do not have influenza. They do not, certainly don't have HIV or COVID, all right? They don't have measles, they don't have mumps, all right? All these things came from domesticating animals, people living in close proximity from them. Measles from cattle, influenza from ducks, HIV from monkeys. Okay? Mumps, you know where you get mumps from? Camels. Who'd have thought? Okay? All right, so these devastating pandemics that we had with the Native Americans after the Europeans arrived, all that happened back in the Eurasian and African continents millennia ago, multiple times, but the people were able to develop some degree of immunity. The total health and climate consequences of the American food system cost 3 times as much as the food itself. This is something from 5 years ago. This was in an actual health journal. I think it was in the New England Journal of Medicine. Standard American diet, very high in meat. Average American consumes over 200 pounds of meat per year, highest per capita in the world. Okay? That is not what we evolved to eat. Okay? I mean, these teeth, these are not going to take down a moose anytime soon. Okay? Your dogs and your cats, they have the teeth of a predator to eat meat. All right? I've got a 21-foot intestine so I can digest plants. My dog has a 3-foot intestine because it's easy to digest meat. It takes a lot of water. To make a pound of beef, it takes 1,800 gallons of water. And again, we consume 3 times the average of meat. Men to make a pound of grains, about 150 gallons of water, right? Much less, 1/10. And it's even less for chickpeas and legumes, things of that sort. Okay, let's talk global warming a bit. Cattle, major source of methane, which is a major greenhouse gas. They get it by burping. One cow can burp 220 pounds of methane per year. And as it says here, it's shorter lasting than the carbon dioxide, but it's 28 times as potent. So we got cows all over the planet making lots and lots and lots of methane. Another aspect of the standard American diet, high fructose corn syrup. We currently are eating 130 pounds of sugar per year. 130 pounds. 100 years ago, we were eating 4 to 5 pounds. High fructose corn syrup, as far as I'm concerned, should be banned. It is evil. It involves an intensive corn monoculture, lots of herbicides, lots of pesticides, very intensive to process, lots of water. If you look at the percentage of Americans who were obese between the end of the Second World War and about 1977, it's somewhere between 10 and 15%. In 1977, that starts to take off dramatically. I'll let you guess what year high fructose corn syrup hit the market. Okay, and these are just some of the, to show some of the ways that animal products contribute to greenhouse gases. Lots of, cattle, definitely number one. Buffalo, I think it's because buffalo just aren't very intensive. I mean, we don't have to put them in feedlots. They're out there eating grass. And whatever else they eat. I've never actually watched them in Yellowstone eat stuff. They're kind of fun to watch, but. So. Okay, they generate a lot more greenhouse gas than plants. This is kind of hard to see, but our friend the beef is at the top there. Okay? Now, the numbers aren't important, but compare that to all of our plants down here, okay? It's hundreds of times as much. Beef production is 200 times the greenhouse emissions of most fruits and vegetables. Then you have to include the land use and the pesticides and the herbicides and the getting it to market, and it just goes on and on and on and on. So, okay. Now, I am going to get a little political here. Okay, this may shock you to hear me say this, but I really believe in this. Don't panic. But go MAGA. Let's make America garden again.
All right.
And I'm letting Nina do her part.
And we say that because obviously we are involved here in the garden that we have, Jubilee Garden. But being able to grow some of your own vegetables and fruit and also share them with others is a very important part of what we look for. So one of the things that often comes up is how do we actually eat more plants? So if you look at that little card you got, it said eat greener. So trying to incorporate more plants into our diet can be a challenge for many of us because it requires some preparation. And there's a lot of suggestions out there in terms of how to do this in your own life. But this is a way that you can impact your life and the life around you, the earth, every day with every bite you take, is by choosing to eat more plants rather than animal foods. And this could be just one meal a day, one day a week. How many of you have heard of meatless Mondays? Or meatless Fridays during Lent. You can make that last all year long. 1 week a month. Each time you choose to eat plants, they have actually done some studies and they've done some calculations. A total vegan diet can actually lower the greenhouse gases of your diet by 70%. So you have a 70% impact on what you're doing with what you're putting into your mouth each day. So skipping meat 1 day a week saves more greenhouse gas emissions than eating locally for a whole week. So if you're trying to eat locally and eat meat and everything else, still you can have a bigger impact by skipping the meat along the way. Because when we talk about...
We still want you to eat locally.
Yeah, we still want you to eat locally if you can, but you have a big impact with what you choose to put into your mouth every day. Because if you think about it, beef, especially beef, takes a lot of land, energy, and we are taking the food that would otherwise be fed to humans and feeding it to that animal, and it's not very an efficient process. So a lot of our lands that have been taken over, like in the Amazon, if you look at the clearing of forests and everything, has been done because they want to produce beef. So let's go to, there's lots of resources out there in terms of if you want to start eating more vegetables in your life and fruit in your life. There's Forks Over Knives has a lot of recipes that are all plant-based, mostly whole food plant-based. So we're really talking about getting back to, rather than buying things in the store that have a label with like 20 different ingredients on them, you buy things that don't even have a label. Apples don't have a label. Most of your grains that are sold in bulk don't have a label except to tell you that it's like wheat berries or soybeans. There are other resources as well for whole food diets, nutritionfacts.org, nutritionstudies.org, straightupfood.com are all great sources to kind of get you going and inspire you. Dave and I had made the decision a couple years ago to eliminate animal products from our life. Cheese was very difficult, let me tell you that. That was the last thing that we gave up. But it has been very beneficial, not only in terms of the impact of what we do every day, in terms of lowering our impact on the environment, but also for our health as well. As you all know, Dave's a lifestyle medicine doctor, and the American College of Lifestyle Medicine supports a whole food, plant-based or plant-forward diet. Doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be vegan, but meat becomes a condiment rather than the center of your meal. Those animal products are used to complement your mostly plant-based diet. And that's what we see around the world when you look at that number that we eat 3 times the meat of someplace else. Most of those people still are using some animal product, but they are meant to complement the vegetables and fruits that are the main part of their diet. So, and with that, we will turn it over to Steve, and we'll see you all in the garden. And if you want to talk about opportunities in the garden, come and see us. And Dave's got to get up the pictures.
You know, Dave, you can wait a minute for the pictures too, if you'd like.
I just want to get it on.
Sure. Flip open to a few notes here, folks. As Sandy said, I'm Steve McAvoy, of course a parishioner here. I'm a civil engineer. I work at Department of Transportation. And I guess the title of my talk was Making Way for the Wild World. And you know, I wanted to temper that with, you know, the fact that in my life I've had opportunities to you know, take some measures on land management tactics on my own place, but I want to say before I get into all this that our work for sustainability comes in all forms. It can have to do with being aware of our material consumption, or our resource usage, our impacts, exposing youngsters or everybody to being educated about the environment. So I just wanted to temper my presentation with that. Because we don't all own land, we all have different gifts, we all have different resources in our lives. So I wanted what I say here to be in that context. Laudato Si has a lot in it, as we know. And so what I did, I kind of looked at, I had read it before, but I kind of looked at it, and I pulled out some comments that are, they're kind of different, but they focus around what I'm going to talk about here too. And I just want to say I was excited about Laudato Si because for me, of all the wonderful things in our church, I think for a long time, European faiths have not neglected, but I think the regard for God's creation in terms of wildlife and ecology and resource use has, in my mind, it kind of took a backseat to some things, because God isn't just about between people, it is about people. But all of creation is God-given, whether it's a goose or an ant, another person, a wonderful piece of land, a clear stream. So that is why I was so excited about Laudato Si. It seemed to tie a lot of our faith together. You look at the creation story, the creation of the sky, the stars and the dome, and what they call the creeping things, all the animals. So early on, I think our faith does value this. Laudato Si puts further emphasis on it. So that's what I was really excited about. And so, again, I just wanted to say a few things about some statements in Laudato Si that have a lot to do with what I'm going to talk about. And these are kind of eclectically put together, but some points from the encyclical, I noticed that it references loss of biodiversity, talks about that. It's something that's happening yearly. We're losing hundreds of species every year. A lot of them aren't big species that we might recognize, like a buffalo or something, but we're losing them nonetheless. Another point I thought was well worth mentioning was it's not enough to think of different species as resources to be exploited. And I say that I don't think most of us want to exploit things, but our economic paradigm brings us to places where we maximize economy, we maximize monetary value. And we have to do that sometimes. You know, we need what we need. But integrated with that has to be a respect for our wild resources. And another point I picked up on for this presentation was these species have value in themselves. They're really not valued because they have a commodity position within our economy. So innately, they have value that God gave them. And another one I picked up on was the fact that Pope Francis made the point that our dominion over the universe should be understood as responsible stewardship. And he talks about anthropocentrism, in other words, only people. And I think that's important. It's not to diminish people's importance or our empowerment for each other in the world, but it can't be standalone because we're connected to everything. So whether it's our water, other species, resource use, it all impacts other people and other creation. Finally, I did notice a quote by Thomas Aquinas, and I'll just read this. He thought it was important enough to put it in there. Nature is nothing other than a certain kind of art, namely God's art. It is as if a shipbuilder were able to give timbers the wherewithal to take the form of a ship. And for me, that ship is ecological harmony. Doesn't mean we're not part of it, but we have to have a big view of ecology. And with that, later on, I think in those few paragraphs he mentioned, when nature is viewed solely as a source of profit, this has consequences for society. And I guess that, brought me to thinking, what can I do? What can I do in my life to make a difference, in terms of the species loss, biodiversity loss, habitat degradation, these sorts of things. And again, I want to say humility is a big thing to me. And so this is kind of hard talking about what I've done. I've just done it. I did it because I could do it. So anyway, I'm of course not independently wealthy, but I don't live hand to mouth either. So I figured this is a contribution I could make for the earth. I do own land in the Helena Valley, and I had some high groundwater, so I elected to build a pond there. And the pond was kind of a wet area, and so I had an excavating friend of mine had worked with building the Custer interchange out there. And so we staked out an area for a pond, and the Helena Valley is a big area for birds, waterfowl, shorebirds, ground nesting birds. It's a very valuable place for birds. And more than this, my philosophy was that I don't own a lot of land, but what I owned, I wanted a portion of it for me. This is my belief. All of it, I didn't want going into my bank account. I wanted to leave something for creation. And I've had blessings in my life. I'm able to do that. So I wanted to do it. And I had neighbors and I had folks mention to me that, well, Steve, you're going to lose X ton of hay, which is true. I might have lost 10 ton of hay. But what that pond and that wildlife has brought, not just for me, but people come and visit it, is really priceless. It impacts quality of life. And I think for me, it is giving back to, opposing some of the trends where wetlands are lost, habitat does degrade over time, and we just have to watch our impacts. And for instance, since I was born, late 60s, blue herons, kingfishers, they've declined and nobody really knows why. They think it's because of habitat loss and just some factors that are hard to pinpoint. But this land was grazed and it was pretty beaten down when I bought it. It's been used very intensively. I think, economics were number one. And I don't begrudge anybody making money from land, but I think we have to leave a place. I have to leave a place for something wild. Just as if we tithe in our own church, we give part of our resource, our wealth. That's the way I feel about land, and I think other people do too, that you should leave something. So anyway, this land was used really intensely. It was grazed. It had 35 cow-calf pair on it for 5 months, so that's 70 animals. It was really pounded. So it's fun to see it come back. I graze it, I grow hay, but I leave cover. I graze it to a certain extent. And I've enhanced irrigation, so I use less water by where I put my takeout. And so with that, I think maybe Dave, we could put up, you got the pond picture. This is the pond, and it's got 5 different nests or nesting areas, islands, and a lot of different wildlife nest here. Is there a picture of the goose there, Dave? Yeah, Canadian geese, we know they're common. Everybody doesn't like them pooping on the golf course, but they're wonderful birds. God created them too. They nest here. This year, 2 pair nested here. Maybe we can go to the next one, Dave. These are mallards, of course. We're all familiar with those. These are white-faced ibis. These come to the pond. They're on the edge of their range. They're usually south of here. They need aquatic habitat and shallow water versus a hole dug in the ground, just because they forage for insects and things. So ibis are there. Maybe we could go to that next. sandhill crane, and they nested there this year. We could go to the next one. And the trumpeter swans. And the trumpeter swans they have a particular story because towards the start of this century, they were hunted almost to extinction for their skins and their feathers. By 1930, they were down to about 70 individuals in the lower 48. They were almost gone. This wonderful bird was almost gone. And this pond, they stop at this pond now, coming north. So flying overhead, these birds must think this is a good place to be. That's the ultimate, I guess, confirmation that something good was done to me for trumpeters. So I want to end with an anecdote. I was out with my dad, who really taught me, and my mother taught me to have a lot of regard for the wild world. And Dad and I were sitting out there in the car. One day we were watching what comes into the pond, and this big bird comes out of the south, sets its wings, and lands in the pond. It's the largest waterfowl in the world. And like I said, it was almost gone. And so for me, that was a cause for, it was a statement, it was a point in time where I really realized that we have power over changing things for the better. And there's hope about that. I mean, if 70 of these birds can come up to thousands and thousands like we have them now, for me that was a real lesson. It's in hope and our own empowerment about the environment. It's not lost, but the changes we make really make a difference. And that's why I wanted to mention that story at the end. I've done a few other things. Of course, like a lot of folks, I've had solar on my shop, and I've coupled that with a cheap electric car, so the solar runs the car. So it's depreciating solar probably twice the rate normal solar would be depreciated. This car doesn't just go 45 miles an hour, and it's not $80,000 Tesla, it's $6,500. And it goes 0 to 60 in 10 seconds. It's the best car I've ever had. I've always driven junkers, so it's a great car. So that is another effort I've taken, or something I could do in my line of work with my blessings in my life. I did the solar. One other thing I do for sustainability as far as managing hay is it's grass hay, so I can afford to cut later when a lot of the ground nesting birds are on the wing. Those animals, even fawns, I mean, a lot of fawns everybody knows, get chewed up in swathers. So I wait till third week of July, and it takes care of a lot of that. Sometimes you can't do that with alfalfa, but I'm able to do it with grass. I've had people say, well, you should put it in alfalfa, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do it with grass so I could cut later. That's important to me. And then I also leave some cover along ditches and ditch areas and swales for birds, ground nesters. And there are a multitude of birds that use that particular piece of land. And so anyway, those are my efforts on the land, and that kind of, I guess my point is I didn't want to take everything from the land for my own purpose. And I also think it benefits everybody, benefits the earth, biodiversity, and it's something that for me monetarily was well worth it. So that's about all I have to say.
Thank you, all of your panelists. Thank you, Steve. The picture that was with the announcement of this event was Steve with his percher on horses out on his land with the Elkhorns in the background. I think you may have seen it. So, questions? Jeanette?
Yeah, I actually have a question. I teach history of food at Carroll, among other things, and we spend a significant amount of time, and maybe this is to Nina and Dave, talking about justice and food justice. And it's great, and all of these things are great. But let's understand that we have so many people in this country that simply cannot afford, either monetarily or in terms of time, to eat this way. And I look at my students, and I look at how I feed them, and it's great. They can't afford that. Do you see what I'm saying? So what's that middle ground of what I can afford in terms of time and money because I have a full-time job versus people that are living on the poverty line? And this is a huge issue for me.
Now, I understand entirely. We have entire recipes, okay, that we can go through that are way cheaper than anything the standard American diet is eating right now, okay?
No, I mean, I understand
And-
that. I'm
and-
talking about time as well.
Right, and they are easy to make, okay? What is more convenient than an apple? Okay, there's nothing out there that's more convenient than that. You gotta pull the annoying sticker off now, but that's about it, okay? There are ways to do this. I mean, we've developed entire things based on, that single mom with 3 kids who's got 15,000 different activities going on, okay?
And they only make $15,000.
And they only make 15, exactly, okay? All right, we live in the bean and legume capital of the planet. They are dirt cheap, okay? And they are an extremely healthy diet, okay? Nana and I, you know how many days a month we cook? We cook 2 days a month, okay? We do everything in the Instant Pot, and then we put it in the freezer. And then we pull it out as we need it, okay? Because we don't want to spend time in the kitchen either. So we know that, I mean, we try to design things that are very easy for people to make. Because we understand, I mean, a lot of these things can be very expensive, okay? But we eat a lot of beans and rice and beans, okay? And it can be very inexpensive. But yes, you're right. That's one of the first things I always get asked. How am I going to afford this? Okay? Well, that when people are talking to me, well, I'm eating that 8-ounce bag of chips that they got for $2. That's $4 a pound. I mean, gosh, chickpeas are 79 cents a pound at Winco. So.
Yeah. A lot of times it's rethinking how you're eating. People pay, if you look at a 12-pack of soda now, it's like $6. That can buy a whole lot of carrots. Yeah, it's like a whole bunch of carrots. So it's kind of setting those priorities, but we do have people who don't have refrigeration, that don't have a way to cook. So looking for already made things like obviously canned beans, and already cooked parboiled rice and things like that are still fairly cheap in terms of what you're looking at versus a piece of meat that's going to cost significantly more. The American College of Lifestyle Medicine has actually done studies where they've looked at the cost of a totally plant-based diet versus a meat-based diet, and they've actually been able to run the numbers where it can actually be cheaper. But again, it takes some rethinking about what you're doing.
Education as well?
Yeah, and education.
People need free education?
Yeah, they need to learn some different choices that they can make. When we travel, we cook in a microwave, and we do things like tortillas with lettuce and beans and rice. Our meals don't cost very much when we travel, because we're not out spending, $20 on the same thing at, Taco Tuesday or something like that. So yeah, so there are possibilities for people, especially on budgets, and there's quite a bit of information out there. And we've actually been working with Food Share too. They've been pushing more plant-forward food there as well, now that they have their kit.